This week we're going to start breaking down a website into its two core pieces. On one hand, we're going to look at the HTML and the other the CSS. What goes into them, how they're structured, and why we need them, what they're used for, stuff like that. Okay. So, yeah, this is going to be in two parts. The first part we're going to look at is the HTML basics. And the first thing that we are going to look at is what is the core structure of a HTML page? Well, all HTML pages, like we said last week, are all going to be made up of a few of the same core elements. Okay, and here I have them up so you guys can see. The first one we have is what's called the doc type or document type declaration. All that this is doing is letting the web browser know what language your web page is being written in. We have up here that its doc type is HTML. That actually means HTML5. If we were using HTML4 or XHTML, it would be a lot longer declaration type. And actually, I have one right here you can see. This is XHTML 1.0 transitional, and we can see there's a lot more that has to go into this declaration. We have the fact that it is HTML, and then we have a link to the actual language rules according to the W3 or the World Wide Web Consortium. Okay, so that's a lot of stuff to remember, and it's no fun having to put all that in. We probably have to save it in a spreadsheet or a text document or something so we'd have it for the future, or we can use something like Dreamweaver that automatically is going to fill all that in for us. But we're not using XHTML, we're using HTML5. And luckily, HTML5 shortened it, so now it's just doc type as HTML. The next thing we have after that is the HTML tag. You can see here's the beginning of it, and here's the end of it. Remember, HTML tags are generally going to have a start and a finish to them, and this one does. This HTML tag just says everything inside this guy right here is going to be our HTML. Once we see this /HTML, that means that the code is finished and there's nothing left for the web browser to render. Okay, so it's really important that we use those HTML tags. Next is what's called the head. And the head is going to store a lot of information for us. This is stuff that the end user doesn't generally see, but they're going to reap the benefits of. For instance, in here we have what the character set we're using. Standard is UTF-8. That's going to be always what you use. Okay. It has the title, and what the title is just the name of our web page. An example of that, let me pull up Internet Explorer here real quick. Go to Yahoo. We can see right here the tab up at the very top how it says Yahoo Search. Okay, this is the actual title of the page. Okay, and that's where it's going to appear. You wouldn't think that this would have a lot of importance when creating a website, but it actually does. It's going to make our page easier to search by Google, Bing, Yahoo, all these different guys. And it's just the standards that we have to conform to. So you have to make sure that you include a title. And also inside the head is where we're going to include things like scripts we may be using or a link to our style sheet. So it's really important that we include the head, which, again, all this. And then after that, we have the last piece, which is called the body. Okay, and what happens inside the body is this is the actual web page. Okay, this is where we're going to put all of our content, our pictures, if we have any movies or music, all that stuff. It's going to live inside the body. So it's very important that we also include that. Otherwise, we don't have a web page. So what's going to go inside the actual body of our web page? Well, that's just going to depend on the type of site that we're creating and what you want to do with it. Okay, but it's going to be made up of what are called elements. And we have three core elements. The first is a text element. And that's exactly what it sounds like. It's just text, any writing that you may have. Okay, usually these are going to be wrapped with a paragraph tag or a heading tag, or utilize different enhancement tags such as a strong or an emphasize to draw the reader's attention to these areas. But, for instance, paragraph tag. Hello there. Okay, that's an example of a text element. Okay. It's also going to be made up of what is called an image element. And these are just image tags that are going to add some robustness, to break up our text, to just add some flavor to our page. Okay, so those are image elements. An example of an image element would be image source equals quotation marks and then the actual link to your image. So let's say we have it in a folder called images/cat.jpg. Bam. There we go. There is an example of a image element. Okay. And that's not actually linking to anything, but I just want you guys to see what an image tag may look like. Okay. And then the last core element that we're going to really use inside of a web page is going to be a link element. And a link element is where we can either link to different areas of our web page, we can link to other web pages, to files, anything like that. We're going to use a link. An example of what a link may look like will be href equals quotation marks, and then let's just say we're going to link to google.com. Okay. This tag's a little different as it does have a closing, unlike the image tag. Okay, image here, we didn't have a closing. The link tag, we do have a closing. Okay. Well, what goes inside between these two? This is where we're going to type what is actually going to be linked. So let's say we'll just do Google search. There we go. All right. That's an example of a link tag. And we're going to go in depth on all of these different tags that you guys are going to use. I'll provide y'all with a little cheat sheet as well. But this is just kind of a look at what's an example of a text element, an image element, and a link element. And if we were to save this, let's go ahead and save it as index2.html. I just picked the name. Okay. And then we can come up here and we can view what it actually looks like. And because this isn't actually a link to anything, this image isn't linked to anything, it gave me a little X. And then here's an example of what the actual search looks like. And if we want to, we can click on it. Okay. And it's not linking anywhere because I didn't type in the full path. Let's try that one more time. We can do http://. Alright, let's try that one more time so you guys can actually see what it looks like. Click on it, and ta-da! Takes me to Google. Again, those are just examples. We're going to talk a lot more about these things when we get to them. So that's really what is going to make up the core of all of our HTML pages, all of our websites. Okay, they're all going to be made up of these guys. But what about the CSS? What is the CSS, first of all? Well, CSS is what actually controls the styling for our web pages. And we can do it a couple different ways. We can keep all our CSS inside of our page. Let's say we just have a website with just one single page. It would be really easy to just do what's called inline CSS, or write the CSS in our web page. And we would do that in the head. Okay? So we would just drop down a little bit here and we would start writing our CSS. Well, we don't like that. That's not good practice, especially if we have a site that's going to have multiple pages, because it just becomes difficult to keep up with all the different styling. Because let's say in the future we create a new section to our site, we add a new page, and we forget a little piece of our CSS. It's not going to match up with the rest of our site. So it's a lot easier if we do what's called an external CSS. And we do that by just creating a new basic CSS. Here we go. Okay. So how is this any different than just a plain old HTML? Well, it's written in a completely different language. And I say language, to me, CSS is a lot easier than HTML is. Because HTML, you have all these tags you have to remember, you have all these labels you have to add, all this stuff. It becomes very not difficult, but there are a lot of things that you have to track with HTML, a lot of tags you have to remember. Okay, with CSS, if you remember those HTML tags, then writing your CSS is going to be very easy. So what does it stand for? Well, CSS, it's an acronym that stands for Cascading Style Sheet. Okay, it controls the layout and design of your web page. Okay, and the CSS is basically just going to have an entry for every design change that you require. Okay, well, when we are creating our CSS, we're going to have to keep in mind the order that we are putting these elements in and what elements we're using. Because if we use, let's say, we want to change what's called a paragraph tag. We'll just use that as an example. Okay, so paragraph tag. Let's say we want to make every paragraph, say we want to give it a font size of 24 pixels. All right. Well, if then later on down our CSS we make a change that's going to affect that paragraph tag, that's going to be overridden. Okay, and the reason that happens is, or the reason we call it cascading, is because it flows from the top to the bottom. So if you have an element towards the bottom that overrides something at the top, that thing at the top is not going to work. The thing at the bottom is going to take precedence. Okay, so it's really important that we keep track of what we use in the CSS, so that way we won't have issues further down the road. Okay, so what is this I did up here? Okay, when I typed in this P, okay, what does all this do? Well, every CSS is going to be made up of two core parts. We have a selector and a declaration. Our selector is this guy, the P. It's basically selecting the paragraph tag and saying every time we use the paragraph tag, you need to make sure you do what the declaration says. Declaration being font size 24 pixels. Okay? And there's got a lot of different commands that you can do in your CSS. So don't get discouraged if any of this stuff looks scary or crazy, or, oh, I don't know, I wouldn't know how to do that and all that stuff. Again, I'm going to give you guys a cheat sheet so you'll have it in front of you, and you'll know different commands that you can use with all these different options. Okay? So the important thing you need to take away from here is CSS is made up of a selector, the P, and the declaration, which I used font size 24 pixels. Okay? Breaking this down a little more, inside the declaration, there are two pieces. We have a property and a value. Property being font size, this guy, and then the value of what are we setting it as, which is 24 pixels. Okay. There's a couple other pieces we can look at here. Okay. Everything that happens inside of this little guy, this little squiggly caret, that is the CSS for this specific piece. Okay. We use a semicolon here that basically lets the web browser know something is about to happen, or we are making a change to something, and then the semicolon here means this is the end of the statement. Okay. When we're writing our CSS, it's really important that we make notes for people. Not necessarily for people visiting our page, but someone who's going to make changes to the site after you're gone, or say you sell your web page to somebody, or you're working on a job and you end up leaving to go to another company and you wrote this website. Okay, it's really good to keep notes for people. Okay, and we do this by using tags like this. There we go. This is the font for the body. I did that, and it's not actually going to make any changes to the CSS. Okay? All it's doing is saying, here's a note. The note doesn't make any changes, doesn't affect the page in any way. It's just so whoever looks at the CSS will know, hey, this is what they meant by this. Okay? So this is nice that we can change the attributes for a page. Okay? But that's not very specific. That's going to affect our entire site if we just use this P tag. Okay, because it's going to say every time you see a paragraph tag, I want the font size to be 24 pixels. Well, maybe I don't want that. Maybe I only want a special section to use that 24 size font. Well, we can actually drill down a little deeper and control it more with what's called ID tags and class tags. And let's start from a little higher level. Class tags are going to affect a group of elements. So let's say that we had paragraph tags that happened in the body, okay, the main body of a site. Well, what we could do is we could basically say paragraphs with a class of body. We want these guys to have a font size of 18 pixels. Alright, and then that's only going to affect anywhere that we use a body class. Okay, and we can go even further down from that, where let's say there's only one time we want to use this. We can do what's called an ID tag. ID, okay, is signified with a pound. Class is a period. ID is a pound. Okay, let's say main page. Okay, body. All right, here we can say we want the font size to be 14 pixels. Okay, so we have classes which control a group, and then we have the IDs which control something specific. Okay. Well, when we do this, you also have to keep in mind you have to use these same tags when we're talking about the actual HTML. So let's go in here and let's give this we're going to give this a class of, what do we call it? We called it body, so we'll call this one body. Right there. And then let's just make another one so you guys can see. And then what do we call this? We called it main page body. Main page body. Alright, there we go. Okay, that's going to be how you use classes and IDs. And really, this will start to make more sense once you start laying out the pages, probably about a week or two once we start putting things together. Okay, but this week, we're just going to focus really on an overview of what is the structure of these pages and why we use them. So if you guys have any questions about this, if this is confusing to you, don't worry too much. We're still in the very early stages of learning what all this stuff means. So, like I said, just take away from this what an HTML page looks like, how it's structured, what a CSS page looks like, and how it's structured, and how they work together. Hopefully this is starting to make sense. If not, make sure you let me know. Send me an email, send me a message on Selly, anything like that. Just let me know, and we will get this worked out for you. I hope you guys have a great day. Bye.